Muslims do not love other Muslims. They have no love for them. They have no love for the Palestinian peoples, none. If they had any, the Jordanians would have taken in the West Bank Palestinians. Egyptians would have taken in the territory they used to run, the Gaza, and own the Gaza, and they would have taken in the Palestinians from the Gaza. Why have the Egyptians made sure that not one Palestinian is allowed to leave Gaza? Why do they make sure that their border wall is tough as anything? We have thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people in the UK who have no love at all for the UK, but yet live here. I don't want them to live here. I don't want them here. They came under false pretenses. Many of them came illegally and continue to come illegally, and we don't want them here. And I'm perfectly willing to say that because it needs to be said. If I hated Australia, hated the Australian people, hated Australian history, hated the Australian way of life, broke into the country illegally and spent my time trying to undermine Australia, why should I be in Australia? Why? What would I have brought the country? What benefit? What moral benefit? What financial benefit? What social benefit? The answer is you'd have brought no benefit. So why just hope that those people are not in large enough numbers and keep your fingers crossed and put it off for another day? I think we have to start saying very clearly, if you don't like it here, go. And if you don't like it here and you intend to make it worse, we will make you go. We stripped citizenship from ISIS members of ISIS who, even if they had British citizenship, we stripped their passports. We need to start doing the same thing with Hamas. We have Hamas leaders in the UK, Hamas members in the UK. I'm calling on the Foreign Secretary, the Home Secretary, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Attorney General, Prime Minister and others to start doing this, to start taking the passports away and deporting people who support Hamas in the UK.
Is there the willpower to listen?
If they don't listen now, somebody else will down the line.
Because you were warning in 2017 about the strange death of Europe.
Yes.
You're now warning it's time to get absolutely real and hard-nosed.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, we have a couple of choices clearly at this point. One of them is, and I say this metaphorically for the time being, but it's not that metaphorical. One is to stand up and the other is to beg on your knees. I don't think that the British public should be on their knees begging, particularly not to people who dislike them. So best to be on your feet.
You'll be well aware, and come back to what's happening on this side of the world, my fellow Australians need to know this, the whole world is aware that in New South Wales, when the Israeli flag was splashed across the Opera House, there were hideous protests. We had certain people running around saying, gas the Jews. Come back to that in a moment. All sorts of hate language for which, in any other context, you'd have been dragged off in your pajamas and taken to jail.
Have any of them been arrested?
Not that I'm aware of as I sit here. I'm not absolutely current, but I don't think so.
I haven't heard of it.
And then you had, Senior Oman saying there are tears flowing down my face with joy that this has been launched.
Why doesn't he get chucked out of Australia?
Well, it's a good question.
Send him to Gaza.
Let's see what happens.
Send him to Gaza. He can have tears just streaming down his face in Gaza. I'm so fed up of the double standards on all of this. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Muslims have been killed in the last 12 years by Bashar al-Assad and other Muslims in the civil war in Syria. There's no one on the streets of Sydney or Melbourne. There's no one on the streets of London. We have seen hundreds of thousands of people killed in the last decade in Yemen, Muslims being killed. There's no one on the streets of Melbourne. Nobody is standing outside the Sydney Opera House calling gas the Hutu or gas the Houthi, gas the Shia, gas the... Nobody's marching for the dead Muslims in Yemen. Their co-religionists, we're always told about, care so much about their co-religionists, don't give a damn about their co-religionists. They really don't. Muslims do not love other Muslims. They have no love for them. They have no love for the Palestinian peoples, none. If they had any, the Jordanians would have taken in the West Bank Palestinians. Egyptians would have taken in the territory they used to run, the Gaza, and own the Gaza, and they would have taken in the Palestinians from the Gaza. Why have the Egyptians made sure that not one Palestinian is allowed to leave Gaza? Why do they make sure that their border wall is tough as anything? What do they mind? One thing, Jews living. Jews living and Jews winning. It hits them deep in their soul, in their psyche. It's an ancient, ancient hatred, perhaps the most ancient among the monotheisms, and the deepest and the ugliest, the nastiest. and the one that has been least addressed. And we've imported it.
Part of that importation, you've touched on it. Another ABC or BBC type sort of anguishing question was, don't we have to differentiate between the moderates and the extremists? To which I'm afraid my response must be, well, show some courage, moderates.
Sure.
Stand up, condemn this. Have you seen any of that in Britain?
Not much. Quite a lot of so-called moderate Muslims that I've known in the UK over the years, including very good friends of mine, always split when it comes to the issue of Israel being involved in anything.
But Israel and, you can criticize Israel without being anti-Jewish, they say.
Yeah, not really. Not really, I think. I mean, you can criticize it, but to only criticize Israel. I mean, as we sit here, roughly the same population of Gaza is being forcibly moved by the government of Pakistan. Almost 2 million Muslims are being moved by the Pakistani authorities into Afghanistan. Okay, we have a very large Pakistani community here in the UK. If their country of origin can do that, why can't we? If it has to come to that, why does nobody notice this? Why is nobody saying this is an appalling war crime by the Pakistani government? Well, only because there are so many Pakistani politicians and others in the UK and other countries who have a deep connection to their country of origin and would never want to see it looked at in a bad way. They will not criticize that. They haven't said a word about that. So, no, I think that if you are zooming in on Israel, lambasting Israel, and are basically not bothered with everything else in the world, you're not motivated by anything other than being anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, of course. And it just has to be said. I mean, I've said this so many times that I tire myself with it, but it's necessary to say anti-Semitism is a shapeshifter. It's a shape-shifting virus. It can come from anywhere. At times in the past, it was the case that people didn't like Jews because they were seen to be a different religion and strange and different, and so they were hated for their religion. Then after the wars of religion, you couldn't hate anyone for their religion, so people started to hate the Jews for their race. Then after the Holocaust, you couldn't hate people because of their race anymore, so people hated the Jews because of their nation. On and on. It's always been like that.
I just wonder how much sympathy can be extended to the Palestinian people who have not only harbored, perhaps sometimes at the point of a gun, they've not only harbored Hamas, they've voted for them, they've supported them. Yeah. Can they really be used for blame for what they've helped bring on themselves, or am I being unfair?
No, I don't think they can be. The people of Gaza, let's just stick with the Gazans for now. People of Gaza voted in Hamas. Hamas came in and they killed their counterparts in the Palestinian Authority, shot them in the back and threw them off buildings. Today, Mahmoud Abbas, leader of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, is showing total common cause with Hamas in Gaza. These are the people who would kill you, if they got near you, if they took over in the West Bank as they took over in Gaza. So again, the Hamas have no care for their fellow Palestinians. They treat their lives as nothing. The Israelis treat the lives of Palestinians much better than Hamas do.
That's a really important point that's overlooked. Just brushed aside.
Everything's brushed aside.
There were 17 members of the Israeli parliament, can't pronounce
Knesset,
who were Arab. Where are the Jews embedded in Arabic nations?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and let's get to the one of the chants we've heard across our cities in recent weeks: from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea means, and again, most people can't even point to it on a map, and many non-Muslims wouldn't know what they were talking about as they were saying that chant. But the river is River Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean. If so-called Palestine is from the river to the sea, that means the eradication of the Jewish state. Are there any Jews in Palestine? No. No, the Palestinian state will be Judenrein, to use Hitler's phrase. Hamas have said that they will slaughter every last Jew. Their leader said it again only 2 days ago.
Because they're victims. They claim to be victims. I thought the Jews were the victims after the Holocaust.
Hamas has said it will slaughter every last Jew. And the Palestinian Authority has said there can be no Jews in their state. So, if the world wants to create a Palestinian state, it will be a Nazi state in which no Jew is allowed to live. I'm not on board with that.
So is this Israel's war, or is it in fact our war as well?
It's the world's war. It's a civilized world's war. It's a civilized world's war for many reasons. One is, we've had chants on the streets of London in recent days for intifada. We've had intifada in this country. We had it on our tubes and buses in 2005. We had it when a car bomb was placed outside a nightclub down the road from here in 2007. We had it when drummer Lee Rigby was beheaded in broad daylight in 2013 in London. We had it when a suicide bomber went into the Manchester Arena in 2017 and blew up 23 young girls with a suicide vest. We had Intifada on the streets of London, on Westminster Bridge, on Tower Bridge, London Bridge, when we had people rushing across London Bridge with knives, shouting Allahu Akbar, again, this war cry, while slitting the throat of a pregnant woman. We've had Intifada on our streets. Anyone who thinks Intifada stops in Israel is a fool. Comes to Australia, Britain, and everywhere else too. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to decide whether or not we have any courage to stand up for ourselves as a civilization. And if somebody says, our plan is to rid the world of Jews, as Hamas want to do, then I'm sorry, we have to tap into the same strength that our forefathers had and say, okay, our forefathers fought Nazism before, we will have to fight this Nazism. And we will see it off just as our forefathers saw off the earlier Nazism. Hamas and their friends are Nazis, and we'll have to get rid of them. And the Israelis are doing a very good job in the beginning of that, but everyone's going to have to join in. We cannot live with these people. We can't. Not because we don't want to, but because they cannot live with us. But would the history of Christianity have been more bloody or less bloody if Jesus had been more like Muhammad? If anyone doesn't know what I mean by that, let me give a couple of examples. The most obvious one is what is one of the greatest moments in Christian scripture, but the moment when Jesus has brought to him the woman who was caught in adultery. And what does Jesus say when the crowd wanted to stone her for her sins? He says, he who is without sin cast the first stone, and the crowd go away. Now, in the Islamic tradition, a very, very similar thing happens when a woman is brought to Muhammad and he has her stoned. So, history of Christianity, more bloody or less bloody if Jesus was more like Muhammad? I think everyone would say likely to be more bloody. Jesus himself, in the Christian traditions, in all the texts, I think, would you agree, only once really loses his temper? And that is when the money changers are in the temple and he overturns their tables, because the house of God must not be polluted in this way. Now, you may say, that just goes to show that we too can lose our tempers occasionally. Well, maybe it does. Muhammad beheaded hundreds and hundreds of Jews with his own hand. History of Christianity, more bloody or less bloody if Jesus had been more like Muhammad? More bloody.
I can't help adding to that, if I may, though, that for all of what you say, it's obviously all true, but on balance, it's been the Christian-based societies that have been utterly realistic about human nature and set up arrangements whereby we divide power, we break it up, we limit the time you can exercise it, and you exchange it at the point of a pencil, based in a realistic view of man, dignity and worth, human failings.
Yes.
It seems very different. I don't see an Islamic parallel.
No, I mean, there are enlightened traditions within certain Muslim traditions, certain ones. They tend, by the way, to be highly prejudiced against by other Muslims. Thinking of things like the Ahmadiyya community, certain branches of Sufi Islam, which have very admirable attitudes towards enlightenment and a sort of syncretic belief of their own. But these are minority sects within Islam and are largely hated by other Muslims. Islam is about subjugation to Allah. That's why one of the reasons why the Muslim world is as it is. For Islam to have a kind of reformation or a change, an updating, would mean Muslims discard chunks of their tradition. And I see that as being unlikely. If they return to the source, yes, you get ISIS, you get Hamas.